gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So I want to talk about Trump's new tariffs on Hollywood, theoretical tariffs on Hollywood. He has stated that he would implement these tariffs, but that doesn't mean he's going to do it. It doesn't mean that they exist yet, which they don't. As always with Trump, he's been vague about the language, and as has been his strategy with these tariffs for whatever reason, he's just throwing out the idea of a blanket tariff, seemingly just to fuck with the market. And my theory about Trump in general is that he just likes to make things happen on almost like a visceral level. He is drawn to the actions that he noticed get him the most attention in the media and also cause the most sort of disruption, whether it's in the market or people calling him all of a sudden, foreign leaders calling him. He just likes that. He likes doing things that cause a certain amount of chaos. I think it just stimulates him, and he kind of views us all as like ants in an ant farm that he wants to shake up. So I think that's sort of on a base level, right? On like one step below conscious thinking. We're not sure how much of that Trump really experiences, but on one level deeper, I think he's just pursuing the stimulation of chaos. But also, there does appear to be some kind of thought process behind these tariffs. So I'm going to explain it as well as I can, what it could potentially mean, what the best case scenario is, what the worst case scenario is, and what people in Hollywood are actually asking for, as well as where he might have gotten this idea from in the first place. So what he said is that he is going to announce a tariff on foreign films that are coming into the country. He said that other countries offer incentives to draw filmmakers away from Hollywood, and that he views it as a national security threat, which is a stretch. A lot of these tariffs he has been implementing by saying that trade imbalance is a national security emergency. This is one of the workarounds that Trump can use to subvert the normal order of how things are done constitutionally. Being able to announce an emergency for any given reason and take actions under that pretense gives the president an enormous amount of power. And so he has to justify a move like this with the tariffs by saying that it's a national emergency. Again, that's a stretch, even under this like very vague terminology that he's been able to get away with all these other tariff proposals and switcheroos and all that. Justifying that this is a national security threat seems like it would be difficult if somebody was to challenge it in court. And he said that he's authorizing the Department of Commerce to begin instituting tariffs on films produced in foreign land, films coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands. He capitalized foreign lands, interestingly. So my first thought about this was that what he was talking about is American companies, so American films that are filmed elsewhere and then quote unquote imported back into America. And a lot of people interpreted this, obviously because of the way that it's worded, as foreign films. Trump is essentially imposing a tariff on foreign films, like films that come from Korea or whatever. And that is true in the sense that would, if he were to impart these blanket tariffs, that would affect foreign films being like shown in theaters in America. However, that doesn't seem to me to be the motivation behind why he would say this. And people are right to point out that doesn't make sense to just put a tariff on foreign films. That's not going to affect the industry in any meaningful, positive way. However, incentivizing companies to not export the costs of shooting to other countries, money comes from that, right? It's not just about the money that's being made from the film, it's about the money that's being made to produce the film. And that's supposedly, I think, where I guess the people around him have directed his attention to that would make him say this. And a lot of people in the industry, even under that pretense, are saying that it doesn't make sense because the entire process of making a film is oftentimes intertwined. Sometimes they have to shoot it somewhere else because it's meant to take place in a certain setting, or that's just how they have the entire production laid out. And so what does that mean for things that are already produced, things that are already being produced? Are those going to be all of a sudden hit with tariffs that double their budget? Is it going to be impossible for things that are already set to release to be released now because of tariffs? So like I said, in the same way that he mostly just caused confusion with his tariff quote unquote plan, that's what he's doing here again. And I think that he likes that. And I can only think that he purposely does things and makes announcements like this in a way that causes confusion. I think he also likes to do it on his own social media platform, which he officially can do now. Last time it was all Twitter. Every time he posted a tweet, it would cause a huge uproar. And now he does that on his own website, and it essentially does the same thing with a little bit less on-site engagement. So it seems to me that there are some Hollywood people in Trump's orbit that said something about this to him. And I think that he is fixated on these tariffs right now because it is a way for the president to like unilaterally exercise power, especially, you know, authorized through a so-called national emergency. It allows Trump to forcefully throw his weight around in negotiations with other countries. And he views that as the source of America's power and also power that he himself can wield. And I think he fancies himself as very good and very effective at wielding his power. And so that's why we're seeing him do this, because the details don't matter all that much to him. The person that he, I think, talked to about this is an actor named Jon Voight. And Jon Voight was named by him as special ambassador to Hollywood, whatever the hell that is. And so what Jon Voight says he talked to Trump about recently, over the weekend, I believe, was essentially the same thing that the rest of Hollywood is saying in response to this would actually be a good policy, which is tax provisions, tax incentives that incentivize companies to shoot in America rather than trying to disincentivize companies from leaving America. Focus on making it profitable to make movies in America in a way that isn't going to harm the flow of creative assets. Because a lot of people's concern about this is that we're talking about intellectual property here. So there's question about whether you can even apply a tariff to that in the first place. But also, if a company shoots somewhere else, a company that's in America, the company's ran in America, but they're producing a film elsewhere, at least part of it, right? Maybe a portion of it or half of it. And then they release the movie in America. That's not really importing that intellectual property, or at least it's not clear whether that transaction would be subject to a tariff, because you're talking about American company and you're not talking about physical goods. And also, this could just hurt the environment of different kinds of intellectual property in America in the first place. Because again, we're talking about disincentivizing certain types of creating, not incentivizing the types of creating that we actually want to see, which is obviously the type of mistake that a person like Trump is going to make, because he doesn't know anything about creativity. He doesn't care about creativity. I do think that he has a tie to that world, though. Trump is documented as loving musicals and stage shows and stuff like that. And I think he has sort of in mind somewhere that he wants America to be the biggest and the strongest and make the best movies and all that. And who knows what that means to Trump. But honestly, I think there's other Republicans who would be even more cynical and even more of a grim reaper to Hollywood than Donald Trump is, because Donald Trump, he is Hollywood. He recognizes the value of it. But I think obviously this new Republican movement that we're seeing, they want America to produce as much conservative propaganda on the highest levels as can possibly be done. So that's probably the direction we're going to see this go. Now that Trump has made this announcement, the people around him, who also didn't necessarily expect him to say this, are now going to find a way to try to reshape this, vague and not implementable policy into something that can essentially serve the conservative agenda at large. And that is how the Republican Party makes use of Trump. They let him throw his weight around and throw crazy ideas out there, and then they grab onto those ideas and say, how can we defend Trump and use his crazy ideas to help our movement somehow? And that keeps them in his good graces, and it makes it so that even if they don't make progress on their policies the way they thought they might, they at least can benefit from the chaos that is being created by Trump, at least a little bit. So in other words, probably what this is going to turn into is Trump forcing companies that make movies and possibly television as well to concede to certain propaganda demands, that they have to remove certain types of content or have to include certain types of content in order to avoid these tariffs, in order to work around whatever the draconian restrictions that Trump wants to impart. That's how they've used their power in every other situation. That's how the Republicans and the rest of the people in Trump's cabinet have used his tariff proposals so far, is as a way to make demands of the different companies. And then as long as Trump can be wrangled enough to offer anybody any deal with it at all, then they can use that to extract concessions that are favorable to conservatives. So Gavin Newsom has made a proposal in the wake of this. Gavin basically he previously is suing Trump because by saying that Trump doesn't have the right to impose tariffs at all, which he doesn't. So he's challenging the basis on which Trump is using a national emergency to impart these tariffs. I don't know if I'm using the word impart correctly, but whatever. And so now Gavin Newsom is saying that he wants to work with Trump in order to create tax incentives. So in other words, he's trying to turn this policy move in a direction that could actually have some kind of meaningful effect and not just wreck the industry. Because as of right now, saying that no American film can be produced at all in some other place in the world, in any sense, you can't have workers. That would have horrible implications for the animation industry that have animators overseas. And again, it's not just the fact that about how are we going to make projects going forward. It's the fact that there are thousands and thousands of projects being made right now, some of which are ready to be released, that this might make it so that they're never seen. Potentially, that could happen. So Trump has already halfway backed off of this. He said some statements on Monday, I'm not looking to hurt the industry. I want to help the industry. I want to make sure they're happy with it because it's all about jobs. So, if that was true, he wouldn't have made this announcement. And like I said, he had a whole conversation with his ambassador to Hollywood. And what that guy was talking about was very specific targeted policy, right? Tax incentives and very purposefully used tariffs in specific places, maybe on specific types of goods. But this blanket tariff he seems to be doing this every time. I'm sure this is how this keeps going, that the people behind the scenes are giving him very targeted tariff policy that he can use to kind of tweak the balance of trade. But instead of doing that, he just goes with tariffs that are, not only could they possibly blow up the industry in the United States and worldwide, but it also makes it so that these countries have a reason to retaliate. And a big part of what they're worried about is the retaliation from countries like China, which, because of Trump's existing trade war, which is now most specifically with China, they have already reduced the quota of movies that they let into the country from America because their own movies do better in their market at the moment. And China is one of the biggest markets for movies in the world. So again, imposing intellectual property tariffs on these relationships is going to do a lot more damage to the movie industry than has already been done. So that's kind of what we're looking at here, and that's why Gavin Newsom and others are trying to use this as an opportunity to get Trump to actually introduce some tax incentives that would help the industry and keep some of the manufacturing here. But the problem with that is that he would have to go through Congress. And so, again, a big part of the reason Trump is swinging all his weight around like this right now is because they don't really have the ability to do much with Congress. They're pretty tied up. And even with a Republican majority in the House, they can't get much done. They haven't passed barely anything. And that's pretty much what we're going to see from them. So Trump is trying to do as much as he can with executive authority. Frankly, that is what I would have liked to see Biden do, is push the limits of executive authority, especially with Manchin and Sinema capping his agenda and him not being able to forgive student loans in the courts. It's like that would have been a great time to get real bold about what a president can or can't do, especially now that we know that Trump was going to come in and do that anyway. And the last thing that I'll say is that I don't know how this is going to affect the movie industry. I'm relatively close to it, so I know that people in the movie industry have been wanting something to change for a while, and this is a much more drastic change than a lot of people were expecting or wanted, and isn't likely to have a super positive effect. But it could shake things up, and it's possible that some of the policy that comes out of this whole debacle could actually change things for the better. However, that would require some like actual policy instead of just like, throwing a rock at the fucking window and seeing if it breaks. So, I think probably now, though, is a good time to focus on whatever productions can be done on like a very small scale. I advocate for that anyway. I've advocated for that when it comes to like news and content creation, that like smaller teams being able to do less with more, maximum reach with minimum capital. That's kind of the advantage position, I think. And it seems like if companies are all tied up in whether or not they can or can't, shoot foreign or import movies that, were shot in tandem with production companies overseas, whatever, that is potentially going to create opportunity for more independent filmmakers, at least to get ideas out there. And also, if they start using this as a way to impose censorship rules on different production companies, which they most likely will do, that's also a great opportunity for independent entertainment to take up the reins of not being censored and being able to actually do creative work that is not directly approved by the state, or done at the risk of the state cutting your funding at any time or ruining your business at any time. So it's a good time to make independent media, criticizing the government, criticizing Israel, criticizing anything that our current administration doesn't want you to criticize, because as they impose restrictions on those types of expression elsewhere, people are going to be searching for those things, and that's where the market is going to shift, especially in America, for sure. The market is going to shift towards, expression that is challenging to the system and challenging to the status quo and directly opposing the imperatives of the administration, like suppressing diversity and promoting this kind of Christian nationalist worldview and ethic, family lifestyle, and all that stuff. Give it a couple years with these type of policies being implemented. I do think the culture is going to shift very fast towards people being not just hungry but ravenous towards that type of content, woke content. In other words, there's a reason that stuff became so dominant in the first place, is because it appeals to a wide and diverse amount of people, and they can't reverse the effect of that with tariffs, but they're probably going to try. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. Posting all kinds of content there, like book reviews, movie reviews, music. If you like the beats that play in the back of these podcasts, all of that's posted there. Plus my EPs. I just dropped a new EP called Dead Internet Theory that's available on all streaming platforms, and that was available first for members only. So if you want access to that, become a member. And if there's other stuff that you'd like to see as members only content, let me know and we'll figure some things out.